Hello friends, welcome back to the Jamie Bolam podcast. Today we are graced by the presence of my friend and colleague Chrishen Gomez, a conservationist at the University of Oxford's Wildlife Conservation Research Unit, aka WildCRU. Chrishen has spent over 4 years living and working in the rainforests of Borneo, and for his doctoral research is studying one of the world's most elusive and little-known apex predators, the beautiful Sunda Clouded Leopard. Chrishen literally goes into the jungle to catch clouded leopards for a job. How cool is that? Well, of course, all of this action is done in the name of science. Specifically, Chrishen is a conservation geneticist, and through learning more about the genomes of these endangered species, we can find out which troubles they have faced in the ancient and recent past, helping us design the most effective and impactful conservation solutions possible. In his spare time, Chrishen is Social Secretary for Keble College's Middle Common Room at the University of Oxford and enjoys reading and debating, especially intellectually jousting with animal ethicists. Listen on to find out what life is like in the jungle catching clouded leopards for science, how genetics and genomics fit into conservation, and the impacts they have on the worlds of big cat and pangolin conservation, Borneo's biggest conservation challenges, why banning palm oil might be a ridiculous idea, if there is such thing as sustainable palm oil and why it matters, Chrishen's wildest fieldwork experiences, and much, much more. If you enjoy this episode, please follow me on your favourite streaming platforms for more. So you don't miss out on anything due to algorithm madness, I've made a free email newsletter that you can sign up to at jamiebolam.substack.com. I hate spam and much prefer speaking to writing, so as of now, the only intentions I have with the newsletter is to alert you guys to when an exciting new episode has been released and who is slated to come on the podcast in the future. I might add some other bits, like what music I've been listening to lately, but I'm taking this one step at a time and I'm a busy guy, so there won't be anything too crazy on there just yet. You can also follow me on Instagram at jamie.a.bolam. Like the newsletter, I will just use this page to share updates on the podcast, but I might also share some calisthenics, some Latin dancing, basically anything that looks super cool, treating it like a public PR page for myself. So I would love it if you would give me a cheeky follow on there as well. So, without further ado, I present to you, Chrishen Gomez. Okay, welcome back to the Jamie Bolam podcast. My guest today, so my guest today is Chrishen Gomez. Would you like to introduce yourself, Krish?
Hello, people of the internet, listeners of the Jamie Bolam podcast, followers, fans of Jamie Bolam, who's quite marvelous. My name is Chrishen. I'm a researcher on wildlife here at Oxford University. I am in the same group as Jamie. We both work on wildlife in a group called the Wildlife Conservation Research Unit, WildCRU, that's been at Oxford for about 30 years, I think now. And what species do I study? So I'm actually from Malaysia, and I do research now on Borneo on a species called the clouded leopard. Cloud leopards are the apex predators on Borneo, so they sound more badass than they really are. Because when people actually start Googling clouded leopard, then you realize they're slightly bigger cats.
Yeah.
Slightly bigger domestic cats.
How big are they?
Yeah, they're about the size of like a German Shepherd? No, smaller, slightly smaller than German Shepherd.
Really?
Maybe like a collie.
A collie dog size.
Yeah.
I was shocked to hear from Luciano earlier today that snow leopards were not as big as I thought as well.
Yeah, how big are snow leopards?
He said about the same size as David's dog Slate. Was he like a collie size?
Yeah,
he says about a metre long.
Yeah.
The body, and then an extra metre for the tail.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah, that's not
50
big at
kilograms, 40 kilograms. I was expecting like a lion sized.
Yeah. No, when I find out how big a lion is, then I get properly scared because that's a beefy animal.
Yeah.
They weigh over 100 kilos, I think they weigh.
Yeah. Clouded leopard's not that big.
Yeah, cloud leopards are a fifth of that weight.
Really?
Cloud leopards are like 25 kilos. So
wow.
Much smaller. So I work on cloud leopards. I sequence their genomes and look at how genomes are. Look at what genomes are telling us about both their ancient past, so things that happened millions of years ago before before mankind was around, but also more contemporary things, which is what's happening now, especially as humans have expanded so rapidly and changed landscapes quite drastically.
Yeah. So does a clouded leopard count as a big cat technically?
So do you know the official definition for big cat?
Is it a member of the genus Panthera?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
So technically, big cat comes from the roar, right?
Okay. Yeah. So can they roar?
Can they roar? Cloud leopards don't.
They don't. Okay.
It's this muscle in the throat, of course, that's connected to the larynx, and it's about how hard that is. And in all cats, in their development as a sort of pre-birth in the womb, it hardens that muscle. But for the big cats, they don't harden, so they're quite flexible, and that causes massive vibrations when air passes through it, and that causes the roar.
Ah, I see.
So yeah, I guess in that sense, it's not a big cat.
Okay.
But is it within the genus family? Yes.
Yeah.
So the mega group is called Pantherines, of which Panthera is a group.
Yeah.
Cloud leopards sit just outside the Panthera genus as a separate subgroup, but a very close relative.
Yeah, well, they're Neophilis, right?
Neophilis, yeah.
Yeah.
But cloud leopards are the only ones within the Pantherine group that's not Panthera.
Yeah. And I think I remember hearing something cool. Was it clouded leopard canines are the largest relative to their body of any big cat?
Yeah.
Right?
That's right.
Or of any large... Yeah.
Yeah,
canine.
so, and... that's a lot to do with the fact that cloud leopard bodies are small.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
So are they the closest thing we've got to saber-toothed tiger?
Yeah. It is disproportionately long.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's a bit about cloud leopards.
Cool. And what's the state of clouded leopards at the moment? People know tigers are super endangered. I was quite shocked to hear lions are actually getting quite the hammering.
Yeah.
This is pretty much the case with every big cat, right?
Yeah.
So
what struck me about cloud leopards when I first started researching it is how little we know and how little we're okay with not knowing.
Yeah.
Because you don't hear people scream about it in the media, and we scream about tigers because we know, or at least we are trying to know. And by know I mean how many are there, where are they, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
With tigers, we've been trying to do this for the last 20 years, so there's a good legacy of researchers going out into the forest and looking for them and stuff like that. The scary thing about cloud leopards is there's very little information out there to begin with. So yes, I would say there's less concern than any of the other big cats, but it might be a misplaced comfort because we just don't know much about it. And it really struck me because I realized almost all we know about cloud leopards came out in the last 10 years.
Really?
Almost everything.
Wow.
Which is a really short span of time in the world of wildlife research.
Yeah.
Before then, everything we knew about cloud leopards came from cloud leopards that were in zoos. So there were people monitoring and just doing some behavioral stuff in zoos. But yeah, we knew almost nothing about cloud leopards before 2010.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So who started researching them? Was that Andy Hearn?
Yeah, Andy Hearn was the big one.
Yeah. That's your supervisor?
That's my current supervisor. Yeah. He definitely, you can sort of see this change in trajectory the moment Andy started publishing. There's just a lot more content about cloud leopards that started flooding the internet. Yeah. Which is great. But that's pretty young. Andy Hearn did his PhD between 2014 to 17, I think.
Oh, wow.
Or maybe a bit early, maybe 2011 to 17. But anyway, that is pretty recent. And it's the span of just one PhD.
Yeah.
And it's really drastically improved our understanding of the species and what's going on. And I think that speaks a lot about, a PhD for many people tends to be like you're researching this small bit in this huge ocean. But when you study something like cloud leopard, which I think is still in this place where anything you study is going to be a massive punch.
Yeah.
Right? Because everything is new.
Yeah.
And that's really exciting. With other animals, say you study maybe a muntjac, there's been a huge body of work. A muntjac's a kind of deer. Huge body of work.
Yeah.
And anything you research, even as a PhD student, is going to be just sort of chipping away at that massive ice block.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a really specific question in a pool of questions that are already being answered. That's not the case with cloud leopard at all. So my appeal here is if you are thinking about wildlife research work and you still want to find a space within the big cat world,
Yeah.
cloud leopard's your place to go.
Yeah.
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 Forget jaguars, forget lions.
Too competitive, would you say?
Yeah.
Or just,
But also, I mean, this is pretty
it
good.
depends where you go as well, right?
Yeah, but also I think there definitely is a bias among young, tend to be male ecologists towards the big cat world.
Oh,
Which
oh no.
Yeah.
Oops.
I'm calling you out, Jamie. I'm calling
Oops.
you out. And I think it's useful to just examine why there is this bias, because there is a coolness associated with it. I think that I think is definitely there, but it's probably the poor motivation to want to protect a species or study it, because we study things. I mean, real scientific curiosity should be about just raw inquisitiveness and wanting to ask, they discover the truth. I think that's the hallmark of a really good researcher.
Yeah.
So I'd say, like, I think it's really normal to have emotional attachments to some animals over another, but I think the exercise of doing a PhD and becoming a researcher is about overcoming those emotional connections and attachments and seeing the truth as the ultimate goal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So what got you into clouded leopard
Well,
research?
I wanted to just do research in conservation in Malaysia.
Yep.
I thought it was really cool to try and apply some knowledge in biology towards solving some global existential risk. I guess climate change would be appealing for people within the engineering sciences, but I think if you study biology, you really want to work on biodiversity.
Yeah.
That's the big existential problem, and Malaysia is like the place to work on biodiversity. So those dots sort of connected when I was in undergrad, and I decided I'll pursue it.
Mm-hmm.
And the cloud leopard work was legit, not gonna lie, the first thing that popped up.
Oh really?
Yeah,
No
for
way.
me to work on. I had no inclinations towards it at all. I was
Are you a cat guy?
not at all. No.
Oh, wow, no way.
Yeah. I didn't know any of the cat species in Borneo. Didn't know their names.
Wow.
Didn't know what we knew about them. Nothing.
Oh, nice.
I was really bad actually at being curious about these things.
Yeah.
All I knew was there was these high level problems that I was interested in. I was interested in sort of understanding biodiversity as a whole.
Yeah.
I didn't have target taxa that I was attached to.
Yeah.
Cloud leopard came about. I just took the job. Ended up being really cool, of course.
Wow.
I didn't know I was going to be catching clouded leopards in the process.
Yeah. Okay. How does that tie into it then? So people will be like, you catch clouded leopards
Yeah.
for a job?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. It was kind of nuts because I didn't. It's either I forgot or it never occurred to me what was said in the interview, but it only hit me much later that we're actually going to be living in a primary forest and we're actually going to be trying to catch these clouded leopards.
How do you catch them?
Yeah, so
you don't go around with a net or like a fishing.
No, that's
fishing
not going to
idea.
work.
No.
You're going to lose that battle very quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only way we found that it works is by bringing these live traps to where the cloud leopards are being found and putting them in really tight ridge lines where the cloud leopard would be forced to enter.
Yeah.
Just as part of its natural movement. And so we don't bait the traps, we don't put doors, we don't seal any of the doors. We keep both doors open on both sides of the trap. And yeah, it works really well.
Wow.
As long as the cloud leopard is going through that path,
So
it passes through it.
Did you have to verify where to put traps based on?
Yeah, so the process is
Camera
really long.
traps or-
Yeah, exactly. You camera trap the heck out of a place, find out all of the major corridors for movement of a cloud leopard, and then put a trap there, which is often one of the hardest things in the world to do.
Yeah. How heavy are they?
They you can take them apart, but I think each person will be carrying something like 40 kilograms on their backs
Oof.
up a mountain
Ouch.
for 8 hours.
That's rough.
Yeah,
In the tropics.
in the tropics. So it's muddy, it's slippery. You're constantly, some of the paths where we hike, it's quicker to just slide than walk.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you get any leeches in?
Oh yeah. The leeches are like a permanent
Man,
fixture.
leeches are not my thing.
Are you no longer coming to visit?
I'll still come to
Have we
visit,
lost you?
but
That was a quick one.
I'll coat myself in salt.
Yeah. I've seen people try everything and nothing works, honestly.
No.
Yeah.
I need to get over my...
Yeah,
my
you do.
disgust with
I think that's the
leeches.
only thing.
If anyone knows where to get medicinally leached, like, do let me know.
Yeah.
Because I went hiking in India a couple of years ago in the Himalayan foothills, and there were leeches everywhere.
Yeah. I don't think you can run away from it.
No.
I think you just have to. I mean, if you're doing it once a week, yeah, fine. You can like rub your whole body in salt and do whatever prevention you need. But if you're going to hike every single day, and you're starting 8 o'clock in the morning, first thing you wake up, you have a quick breakfast, and boom, you're gone.
Yeah.
Right. After you do that a while, you're like, you don't want to be faffing around with big socks and salt every morning.
No.
So I say, the easiest thing to do is to overcome the fear.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so putting up the live traps is difficult. Once we set it up, Cloud Leopard walks through. I'm condensing it. This is quite a long process.
Yeah.
Can take up to 6 months before we catch a single cloud leopard.
Wow, through one of the traps. How do you know when a trap goes up?
Yeah, so that's another part of the process, which is setting up remote monitors and making sure all of that works, which comes with all kinds of challenges in a primary forest.
Well, it's because everything's wet, so your electrics get
Yeah, so the electronics of the camera is a big thing. So lots of cameras fail. But the second thing is there needs to be some sort of cellular reception to send information to us remotely. Sometimes that involves getting cellular receptions from other countries.
Like Indonesia?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I've had to go to Indonesia, buy a SIM card there.
Okay.
And then use that SIM card for the cellular camera. So those kind of things happen. So yeah, these things take long. And could be 6 months of prep before we really catch a single cloud leopard.
Wow.
And then we catch one, and then, okay, next one. And then it's repeat process all over again.
So what do you do once you got a leopard in the trap? What do you do?
Yeah, so...
Do you get a text on your phone saying...
Yeah, we get a text with a picture.
Oh, sick.
So we can verify what individual it is, the sex, try and estimate the weight, everything. Then we hike up to that spot. And again, a really grueling hike because you normally start... cloud leopards are nocturnal.
Yeah.
So you normally start the hike at like 11 p.m.
Damn.
And you get to the site at like 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. or whatever. And then you get to work right away. And the hike up, you're carrying oxygen tanks and medical equipment and water gallons. Anything you might need to do an emergency surgery. You need to bring all of that with you.
Yeah.
Because anything might happen.
That's true.
Yeah, and again, it's an 8-hour hike. You're carrying all of these things that you probably will not use at all.
Yeah.
And then if all goes well, and it always has, you anesthetize the animal, goes to sleep, put the collar on, get blood out, wakes up maybe after 3 or 4 hours. When it's fit and no longer drunk or whatever, you open the doors and it goes out.
So how far away are you when you open the doors?
Yeah, we've never had to be super far actually. No cloud leopards have ever
turned around.
Yeah, no, they've always we sort of open the door and then we walk away, and it'll normally go out once it feels comfortable.
Yeah.
So it'll stay in the trap for a bit.
Yeah.
It never goes out immediately as you open the door. This is true of every animal we've captured. I think nothing ever leaves the trap immediately. Yeah. Because they think it's a setup, of course.
Yeah, that's what.
I mean, we had caught this leopard cat once that we didn't intend to catch, and we opened the door and it was just completely open and you could see it, and we were on the other side of the door, so it makes sense to just walk away. But because it could still see us, it didn't want to unfix its gaze. It didn't want to turn around. It just stared at us and just kept like snarling at us. It was just so angry, so we had to just walk out of sight.
Wow.
And wait, and then it went off on its own.
Nice. So what? Oh, sorry. Carry on.
Same thing happened with porcupine, orangutan.
You've caught orangutans in the trap?
Just once, yeah.
Wow. What was that like?
Well, I wasn't there on this one. This happened with another research manager. But again, just use a rope, open it, and it goes out.
Wow.
Yeah. Got bears loads of times.
Some bears,
But yeah, I mean, the good thing is the animals always get out pretty safe.
Yeah.
And we're there pretty quick. So it's a big concern of ours, right? Safety. Making sure none of the animals are injured in the process. But so far it's been right. Bears are great, man. Bears let themselves out.
What, some bears?
Yeah.
How do they get out of the trap?
Well, they always sort of work out that the door can open.
Okay.
Because you can just slide the door up.
Oh,
and
nice.
It goes up.
Very handy.
So the bears do play around a bit. And eventually they work out that the bears are movable.
Yeah.
And, they're able to stand up and pull.
Nice.
So they do that.
Some bears are the smallest type of bear, right?
Smallest bears in the world.
How big are they? Or how small?
Yeah, I can't pull numbers from top, but again,
dog size?
Yeah, it's about the size of a large dog.
Yeah.
So it's really small. Of course they're chunky.
Yeah.
But yeah, not so chunky that they can't, they climb trees. So not so chunky that they can't pull themselves up and all that.
Nice.
Yeah.
So once you've gotten the samples, from the blood.
Yeah. So
from the leopard, what do you do with it?
Yeah. So I fly immediately to a lab where I extract DNA, and then send that off for sequencing. And what comes back in my computer is just rows and rows and rows of A, T, C's and G's, and that's what you then use to do some bioinformatics.
Yeah.
And look at genes.
What is bioinformatics for anyone?
Yeah,
listening?
so bioinformatics are a suite of computer tools that analyzes biological data, I guess. In this context would be genetic data.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like programming basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, why people might think conservation, they think about maybe not wrestling crocodiles, but, going out and capturing leopards and being in the jungle and studying the natural history of animals, where does genetics come into it?
Yeah, I think, if you went into the Department of Biology at Oxford University today, you'd see a whole swarm of people on their computers with big computers just chugging away at code.
Yeah.
And that is indicative and reflective of the change of skill sets that are used to study biology today. Biology has fully entered the age or era of data science.
Yeah.
Where we're now becoming used to dealing with we are on the other end of the problem now where there's too much data.
Yeah.
And not enough tools to make sense of them. So that's definitely true of the genetic space because of whole genome sequencing, right? Genomes are, your entire DNA strand that's in every cell in your body. We're in the age where you can sequence the entire thing for any sample, any individual, any animal, plant.
Yeah. And it's only getting cheaper and cheaper.
It's getting cheaper, and you can do it in a day now, super quick, and you get your results right away. So it's really easy. So if you worked with, I work with a difficult animal, but if you worked with something like mice, for example, you could run really cool experiments because you're constantly catching them, and you can catch them, and you can get access to their genetic data really quickly. I guess biology now is a problem more of data, making sense of data. So you find that most biologists are expected to be proficient coders or data analysts.
Yeah, stats.
Yeah.
That's using R normally, at least for me.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
What do you use? R?
Yeah, a bit of mix of R and Python.
Yeah.
Because
I'm afraid Microsoft Excel won't cut it anymore.
No, yeah. Though I do think we underestimate Excel quite a bit.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I do think a lot of...
Huzzah!
Yeah, a lot of things can be done on Excel.
Yeah.
Sometimes we jump to R really quickly. I think, it's good to learn R, of course. But, when Excel is so intuitive and you can do stats on Excel.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Go with what works,
Yeah, go with what works.
Yeah, nice.
Don't give yourself... PhDs are hard enough.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's very true. So, what kind of what questions are you asking with all of your genetic data from your clouded leopards? And are you getting full genomes from them?
Yeah, we're getting full genomes. Really, I think the thing about genomes is the questions are going to... It's one of those data sets where the questions aren't immediately obvious right away. Because what we understand about genomes is also expanding. For example, the prevailing thought maybe 10 years ago was that most of the genome is noise. Just
like junk.
Junk, rubbish. You would have heard this term junk DNA.
Yeah. Would you like to explain that for anyone?
Yeah,
Because
so
not ventured into genetics.
So the classical view of a genome is, they sequenced the whole genome of the human in 2001. And then they realized only 3% of it was actually used to code a protein. So we'd call them functional genes because they actually have a function. You can read it and it tells you a protein, and that protein is being used for something specific. Only 3% or less.
That's wild.
Yeah. So what was the other 97%? And then that's the term junk DNA.
Yeah.
It was just thought to be fragments of things we've picked up along evolution. Most of it just noise that didn't play any real function or hasn't yet played function. There was this idea that maybe this is a component of adaptive evolution, where maybe these are just fragments of the DNA that will be used in the future if we needed to adapt.
Yeah. If you need to grow a pair of wings.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's somewhere there.
Grow some girls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was thought that maybe that was that. But I think we're coming to learn now, in the new age of genomics, that there's a whole bunch of things that happens in DNA that isn't just about, well, there's all the stuff that codes proteins, but all the stuff just to keep the DNA functioning.
Yeah.
Right? DNA is a pretty high maintenance thing. So all of the promoter sequences that make sure that you're reading the DNA right. There's things that repairs DNA. There are things that make sure the DNA is being wound and unwound correctly, being read correctly, being fixed or healed if it's damaged. So there's a whole chunk of DNA that is about the DNA itself and not necessarily about what it produces.
Yeah.
There's viral sequences that have sort of become part of the DNA. So the genome is massive, right?
Yeah. What do you call those viruses again? I forgot.
Endoviruses.
Endoviruses.
Yeah, so viruses that have sort of become part of your genetic makeup in a species. I think that's the thing about studying genomes today.
Mm-hmm.
The field is growing. Our understanding of it is still quite nascent, and I think there's so much more to discover. So that's gonna, the genomes we sequence today are going to be useful to us for the next 100 years. And that's why I was a big proponent of, like, before you lose the sample or something happens to it, just sequence the whole genome, because then it's a digital data set.
100%.
And now it's like in a bank somewhere in an online server.
Yeah.
And can never
Safe
be
and sound.
Safe and sound,
Yeah.
presumably.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Have you ever imagined what the world would be like if all servers just crashed? As in, like, destroyed completely?
I mean, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, you know what will happen? We'll be back to the ages of, like, trying to, like, 100 years from now, say there was a remnant civilization that survived this massive apocalypse, and in this apocalypse, we lost all the servers. This new civilization will know nothing about us.
That's wild.
Yeah, unless there are people who are smart enough to still inscribe things on caves and bury letters, presuming all this paper stuff was burnt. Destroyed. Unless there were people who were smart enough to, like, etch things in stone.
Yeah.
We'd be no one know anything about us.
Yeah.
What we did.
I guess from our buildings and stuff.
Yeah.
Archaeology, but, like,
imagine how wild this might be. Like, what if the Aztecs had servers that all got burnt? Or they had paper in and all got burnt.
Yeah.
Like, and we look at cave drawings like, this was a pretty, primitive civilization.
Yeah.
That had creativity, had ideas and all that, but it was not as well developed. But maybe that's just all that got recorded on the caves. I don't know.
That's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
But I think was it the Incas had the knot information system of, like...
Yeah.
Was it their writing system or the counting or something was, like, through knots of strings?
Yeah, it was
and nobody knows.
Yeah.
Nobody knows how to decode it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty cool. So, anyway, sidetrack. But everything we have on servers now.
Yeah, nice. So what's your PhD focusing on then?
Yeah, good question. I don't know. Your best guess, my friend. What do you think I should do?
Ooh, what have you done? So you're second year of your PhD now, right?
Second year of my PhD is a 4-year program, so I've got like 2 years plus to go.
So what were you doing last year?
Just figuring stuff out. I mean, I did do lots of analysis just because I wanted to visualize whether there was patterns we could derive from the about populations from the genomic data. And I think we're seeing at least preliminarily that there are some structures, there are some patterns that might suggest it's been because of sort of landscape changes recently.
Is that based on how related the leopards are to each other?
Exactly. Yeah.
Hello.
Is it a bad time?
Do you want? We're recording a podcast. Do you want to say hi?
Hey.
So
Cool.
The world's leading expert on snow leopard genetics has just walked into the room. The channel's like, oh no, that's going to cause some problems.
Okay, at this point in the episode, our friend and colleague Luciano at Zeni enters the office, and while we had a fantastic conversation, it was far away from the microphone, so the audio is terrible, and much more importantly, Luciano didn't fancy starring in an episode of the podcast just yet. Luciano is an expert on snow leopard genomics and has also done some great work on elephants in China, and I encourage you to check out his work. He is a top chap. Anyways, we have resumed this episode at the earliest possible moment. Okay. I don't know where we got to, so
We were talking about genomes and stuff.
we were
right?
talking about
Genetics. Yeah.
we were talking about what you were going to do with your thesis.
Oh yeah, okay, let's go back there.
Okay, cool. After a brief hiatus of banter.
A small pit stop.
Yeah. What so what are you going to do with what are your ideas of what you're going to do with
Yeah,
your thesis?
so
You're still trying to figure out, you said.
yeah, with the clouded leopard specifically, I think there's lots of questions to be answered about inbreeding. Of course, that's a really useful question you can answer with genetics.
Yeah.
You can answer things like genetic diversity, both past and present. So infer just from the genome whether we are seeing ancient patterns of inbreeding or more recent patterns of inbreeding.
How do you determine that through genes?
Yeah, so if you have, I mean, this is going to get a bit technical, but if you have regions in the genome, there's a concept in genetics of homozygosity and heterozygosity.
What could you briefly define those?
So when you inherit inherit a single strand of DNA from each of your parent.
Yeah.
Right. And so each person has 2 copies of every gene. And when you have both in that gene, if both of them are the same letter, say an A and an A, you'll call that homozygous.
Yeah.
But in that gene, if you have a point in which one's a A, one's a T, you'll call that heterozygous.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that there are 2 copies of this gene, and those 2 copies are different, they're heterozygous. If the both copies are the same, they're homozygous.
Yeah.
Now obviously, homozygous would mean that the gene that came from my mom and the version of the gene that came from my dad are the same.
Yeah.
And if you had long tracts of the genome that were homozygous, meaning that for 1,000 kilobases, both your mom and your dad had the exact same number of nucleotides, same sequence of nucleotides,
Yeah.
you can infer that your mom and dad have been related for a long time.
Ah, I see.
So they've accumulated all this homozygosity through time.
Yeah.
Right? But if you have these homozygous regions, but they're short, it means that there are small bits of your mom and your dad that are of similar ancestry. You can sort of infer that there is some inbreeding here, but it's from a more recent past, maybe in the last 100 years.
Okay.
Or 10 generations or whatever. So, because we have the access to the whole genome, you can look at these things. And that's useful. Useful because when inbreeding happens is as important a question as is there inbreeding. Because of course,
Yeah.
inbreeding could have happened 1,000,000 years ago, and we're seeing signs of that in the genome today. All that means is that 1,000,000 years ago, some event happened that caused cloud leopards to be restricted and had to be inbred. But those problems could not exist today and may not be a cause for concern at all.
Yeah.
So when the inbreeding happens is very crucial, especially when you plan for conservation. Because if you want to see whether your current activities are causing a pattern, there needs to be patterns that are being impacted today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you found out leopards were being inbred
Yeah,
in the quite recent past, what would you do with that information?
Yeah, if you're finding out patterns of inbreeding, the important thing is to figure out which direction the inbreeding is going. So is it sort of that there's a big sink population where there's a lot of genetic diversity, but there's this other splinter group that is being inbred, or is the whole population, the whole mega population inbred as a whole? So it depends what's happening. Yeah, and then you could design conservation interventions accordingly.
Yeah. So is that normally if they're inbred?
Yeah, it'd be
trying
like
to,
translocation.
Yeah, bring in some fresh new.
Fresh new genes.
Yeah.
Or bring in like corridor connectivity.
Yeah. To make sure they don't get even more inbred.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it really depends what you want to do. But generally, inbreeding, why it's so important, of course, is because it's like an early indicator of future problems.
Yeah.
Once you get in the population that's too inbred, they start accumulating diseases.
Yeah.
It's a classic problem of mating with your family. It's
Yeah.
why it's so frowned upon.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah, big cat related wise, I guess the most prominent example of that is the Florida panther, right?
Yeah, exactly. So Florida is a household example of both the problems with inbreeding and how we can overcome it. Because the Florida panther really isn't a species of its own.
No,
It's not even. I don't even know if it's a subspecies of its own.
I don't know, just a unique. It was, I guess, they call it a separate management population.
Yeah,
because it was like the last remaining.
Yeah, so it's a puma.
population of cougar. Yeah,
it's
cougars
just-
in the eastern states.
Yeah, exactly. It's a puma that is similar to the puma all across the Americas. So I think with the Florida panther, they rescued it by bringing in pumas from Brazil, South
I
America.
think Texas.
Yeah, maybe Texas.
Yeah.
And that helped the population recover.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And after they brought in the fresh new genes, like the
Yeah.
population grew way quicker.
Yeah, yeah.
And like they stopped having all of these like bodily deformities and
yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it was becoming obvious that there were deformities. You know, the
Yeah.
tail had kinks. A lot of them were born with heart failure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
They have like 2 ears on one side.
Exactly.
Those are weird stuff.
Similar example with the Tasmanian devils.
Oh, really?
There's a facial tumor that all of the devils were getting.
Oh, that's like contagious cancer, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy. Imagine
Yeah.
catching cancer.
Yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
sucks.
Yeah, yeah. So there was a problem with that one. Yeah, there are loads of examples of inbreeding in many populations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think ultimately it just acts as like this. I would say the similar thing is happening with the Malayan tiger now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because high levels of canine distemper virus across the whole wild population, and many are being affected. And of course, resistance to viruses as a whole is always going to be a function of numbers. The more variation you have within the individuals in a population, the more likely it is some individuals will survive. But the moment all of your individuals share the same ancestry, same resistance to viruses, things like canine distemper virus can just very quickly take hold and wipe everything out. Because canine distemper is lethal.
Yeah.
Right? If a cat catches it, it's gone. It's dead.
Really?
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. Really bad.
Do clouded leopards ever catch that?
They can. No records of it in Malaysia yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
When you have time, you should look up canine distemper viruses on tigers in Malaysia. It's wild.
I will do.
Because there were videos of tigers strolling into shopping malls.
Really?
Yeah.
What are the effects of the virus?
The virus just...
Does it make them friendly, or are they still ready to eat people?
It removes the sense of fear.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So they become unaware that they are in like foreign territory.
Yeah.
And they walk into shopping malls.
That's great. Okay.
And people will be screaming all around tiger and going frantic, and tiger's just calm.
Wow.
Just chill. That's a very weird sight. One guy got like just collapsed and fainted because the tiger licked it.
Whoa, no way.
Yeah.
So the tiger's not explicitly, unless it's hungry at the time.
Yeah.
It won't be trying to eat people.
Yeah, so it's not aggressive. It's not like rabies or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's just lost sense of fear. It exhibits really weird behavior as a result, but then it dies. Like, it always dies a few days after.
Yeah. That's
after
crazy.
that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, another thing I find really interesting with like conservation genetics and phylogenetics regarding big cat conservation is figuring out or changing subspecies status. So say with the clouded leopard, how long ago was it they were split? They thought it was all one species.
Yeah, that's right.
Or subspecies, and now they've split it.
Yeah. So it's thought to be just different subspecies in Borneo and mainland. Then I think in 2007, American scientists published genetic data proving that they were different enough to be called two species.
Yeah.
So essentially, and here's where the concept of species becomes really like, what is it really? Think about the fact that all dogs in our houses are one species.
Yeah.
And all cats in our houses are one species.
Mm-hmm.
With the cloud leopard, there are two species, right? So that's pretty distinct.
Yeah.
It's not subspecies. They're two different species. It was long held that all tigers are one species, Panthera tigris.
Yeah.
I don't know where we are with that actually, because they broke it up to like 9 subspecies.
I think it was, traditionally,
but I think it's
all
still
the different subspecies like Siberian tigers and Javan tigers and Bengal tigers.
Yeah.
And then I think genetics from not too long ago was like, okay, you have tigers on the mainland.
Yeah.
So that's the Siberians, the Bengals.
Yeah.
The Indo-Chinese tigers. They're all one type of subspecies of tiger.
It's south of Thailand.
And then you have the Sunda tigers as well. So that was on Java, Bali, and Sumatra, of which only the Sumatra tigers remain. I think that was a split. But then in terms of, in that case, I feel like it hasn't made that much of an impact, because suddenly you might have thought, instead of having, I don't know, however many 100 Indo-Chinese tigers left and 50 Amma tigers, these are made up numbers, they're probably still quite low, but not that low. And each of them being very endangered, suddenly you've got way more tigers of one type. We can quote unquote relax a bit. But there's still different management units, and with tigers it feels like that people still consider it Indo-Chinese tigers, Bengal tigers, and they consider them separate things, even though they are technically one subspecies now.
I guess this is where taxonomy becomes political, and that's the problem.
Yeah. Like India's like, no, we have Bengal tigers.
Yeah, exactly.
Russia's like, we have Siberian tigers.
Yeah.
They're not the same as the ones in India,
Yeah.
right?
And of course, like
Yeah.
strictly from a biological perspective, taxonomy has to be independent of political claims.
Yeah.
I think, if you want to feel nationalistic about an animal, that's perfectly fine. I think what we call things in English does not matter at all.
No.
It shouldn't affect the way we classify things taxonomically, though. Because then you lose sense of what the science of taxonomy is.
Yeah.
Phylogenetics, phylogeography. If you lose sense of that because of political questions, then that's no longer a robust scientific field.
Yeah.
Which is quite sad.
Yeah. That reminds me of Sumatran rhinos.
Yeah.
Because there was a concerted effort to try and get together all the countries. I think in the 90s, when they knew that Sumatran rhinos are down. But you think like white rhinos are bad or black rhinos are having a tough time? Like Sumatran rhinos are having it the worst.
Yeah, for sure.
Any.
I mean, I was just at a conference in August in Malaysia.
Yeah.
Where a book was released by the guy who had been working on the last Sumatran rhinos in Borneo. In Malaysian Borneo. And it's just such a failed effort.
Yeah.
Like we had 30, 40 years of lead time to do something about it, and just one failure after another.
Yeah, because all the countries like
they knew there were only like 2 or 3 rhinos around that they were aware of.
But they didn't want to give them.
In the 80s, right? So this was the Malaysian Borneo.
Yeah.
And then when they eventually decided to catch all of them, like 20 years later, they could only get 3, I think, at the time.
Yeah.
And that's probably all there were. And when they got the 3, then they had like, okay, now we have like a bit of, we have a facility, we've got them. Now they have like 10 years plus to figure the breeding part out. And again, did not happen.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it just failed in epic proportions.
Honestly.
I can't blame a single person, of course.
No.
And I don't think anyone should try to do that.
Yeah.
But it just speaks to the failures of humanity as a whole.
Yeah. And I think that's where the nationalism becomes destructive, because all of these countries are like, okay, like, Malaysia and Indonesia principally.
Yeah.
I think there might be 1 or 2, but those are the main ones. But they both had some rhinos in captivity.
Yeah.
But neither of them, and even within Indonesia now, in Borneo, in Indonesian Borneo, there's like 1 rhino in captivity that they found.
Yeah, it's really
but they don't
weird.
want to send it. The Bornean government doesn't want to send it to Sumatra because they're like, no, it's the pride of Borneo. And I'm like, what's it going to do? It's going to die alone without having kids. And that's what happened in the 90s, And,
no, absolutely.
That's why we're in such a bad state. There's 30 left, if that, in the planet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, I once did a Zoom class with a bunch of school kids in Indonesia, and it was one of these really like affluent, smart schools, and the kids just they knew I was a zoologist, so they're like, okay, we're gonna ask him random animal questions, and we're gonna test whether he can answer it. So I was like, damn, this is gonna be bad, like how there's a lot of random animal questions that I have no idea how to answer, and to my fortune, they asked me what's the rarest animal on Earth, on the planet. Rarest animal. I was like, that's a really interesting one. I'm going to take a shot and actually say Sumatran rhino.
Yeah.
And I was right.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to be wrong, because surely, there's some weird marine thing that like, some crustacean or something that lives in the Mariana Trench or something like that. Right? But no, Sumatran rhino would be the rarest, because it's one where we actually know where to find them.
Yeah.
And just the chance of you, even if you went to the place where they're most likely to be, where they absolutely will live, you will hardly ever see them.
Yeah.
Or not at all.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I think, speaking about saying, at least because you trap the clouded leopards, so you get to see them, you get to touch them.
Yeah.
It's sick. Like, when I was speaking with Luciano earlier, he's a snow leopard expert.
Yeah, but he's never seen the animal.
And I asked him, have you ever seen a snow leopard in the wild? And he's like, no. Just in a zoo.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the one thing you have to think about if you want to get into conservation.
Yeah.
Right?
You'll
it's
never...
like, will you be able, if seeing and touching something is important for you, which it is for me.
Go to Africa.
Yeah. Don't do snow leopards.
No. Yeah, go to Africa.
Yeah.
I always have envy for the African researchers, because they get to fly over helicopters, see prides of lions running around, and giraffes and wildebeest and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the wildest stuff that happened? Like when you've been out doing field work in the jungle, what kind of crazy stuff has happened to you?
We saw a pack of dogs kill a pig, bearded pig.
Wow.
But that was pretty nuts because he was hunting dogs.
Yeah. What, dolls?
No, they were just like
Dogs?
street dogs.
Stray dogs?
Yeah.
Wow.
That I guess go up into the forest every now and then. So that was crazy. The wildest thing though. I mean, animal wise, really, Borneo is a really safe place, I'd say.
Yeah.
Just because the animals stay away, man. They would never. Okay, fine. I've had like the primates are pretty provocative.
Mm-hmm.
You'd get like long-tailed macaques chase you every now and then.
Oh, yeah.
Like I've been in to check one camera and I just went there and saw like 20 pigtail macaques.
Oh, yeah.
I just turned around. Like no chance. I was not going anywhere near them.
Yeah, man. When I went to India, the macaques there are absolute bastards.
Yeah.
Like,
They
they will chase you
They
into
are
your hotel
confident.
room.
They know that they are in numbers. They can defeat you.
They know they're endangered, so you can't lay a finger on them.
Yeah,
Okay?
yeah. They've checked the IUCN every now and then.
Yeah.
I've had gibbons hurl their poop at me.
No way, really?
Yeah,
I thought
yeah.
gibbons were cool, man.
They're cool. They're really cool. They're just also territorial.
Yeah.
I mean, this throwing poop thing is a particular primate thing.
Yeah.
And think
Man,
about
I
what.
mean, I only do that on a bad day.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
you
Think
know?
about what humans do when we're upset with people. We also throw shit at people.
Yeah.
Verbal shit.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. So, yeah, the primates are cool.
I think I remember. Did you say like you were doing a river crossing once with Andy?
Yeah. So that was a fun one. That was scary at the time, but now I look back, I'm like, yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
We're basically crossing a river. We went up, crossed the river safely. It was really a stream, not much of a river. But then, classic Borneo, heavy rain, and we're talking not UK rain. It's like proper torrential rain, and we went back down to cross this stream that we had crossed, and it just completely transformed. It looked nothing like the stream we had just crossed. I mean, it grew in width at least by 10 meters.
Yeah.
God knows what the depth was. You can't really tell. But our car was just on the other side of that river. So, it was already the end of the day. Super exhausted. You've just been walking in the rain and you're drenched, soaked wet. You just want to go home.
Yeah.
So we decided we'll cross this river and get to the car.
Easy
peasy. Just another day in the jungle.
Yeah.
We cross this river. Mind you, there's two problems here. Firstly, crocodiles are a thing.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So that should have been on our minds to think about. But secondly, we didn't realize that the depth of this river would have changed quite a lot. So when we walked it, we suddenly realized quite quickly that the water was up to our hips.
Yeah.
And we were not even in the middle yet, so it's going to get deeper. But before we could even get to the middle, my supervisor then got swept away.
Damn.
And just next to where we were crossing, like a bit further down, the river sort of falls.
Like a waterfall.
Like a waterfall.
Shit.
And then it goes into a rapid.
Oh no.
Yeah. A very narrow rapid. With now lots of water.
Yeah.
And it just disappears for an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. Just gone. Taken by this rapid.
Yeah.
And obviously I ran out of river at that point. I had no idea what had happened to him. All I saw was his head pop up and down a little bit.
Yeah.
And then the river just took him.
Yeah.
He just went off, took a bend into the jungle somewhere. I don't know.
Wow.
And he emerged out of the forest 2 hours later. So
Did you find him on the other side?
Yeah. He just sort of crawled back up the forest back to the car.
Wow.
But he was lucky. He sort of the river hit him onto some roots, and then he climbed his way out.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. No, he was great. I think he handled it much better than anyone else would have, but I guess it's the experience and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Nice.
But lesson learned, and lesson for everyone out there. Yeah, rivers are don't cross it.
Yeah.
Not when they're that deep.
Yeah, that's fair. Man, so one other thing you were talking about earlier was pangolins.
Yeah, so...
Pangolins, I think if anyone does know about a pangolin, they're like, oh, it's the world's most trafficked animal. Which is fantastic for people to know, because it's not a lion or it's not an elephant or a rhino products like their horns or ivory.
Yeah.
It's pangolin scales. But that's pretty much... Even now, pangolins, like clouded leopards, we know jack shit about, right?
Yeah.
So we know so little.
Yeah, thankfully I got to know the sort of world expert on pangolins from Borneo. and she's just wrapping up her PhD now. And,
What's she called?
Eliza Panjang.
Okay.
And she's been all that we know about Sunda pangolins, I think, is coming out of her work as well. Again, another amazing thing, like you know, these animals have been around for millennia, and we've been able to study them for decades. But in places like Borneo and Malaysia, I'd say we're just on the cusp of real dynamic research being done on these really difficult to study animals. So she's become really notorious as the pangolin person, and she's been able to collect a lot of samples. So we're gonna sequence genomes, create this really fine scale resolution map of pangolins, and you know that has loads of implications down the road, because you know if you traffic something, you find the parts. But the one way you can sort out where these parts have come from is by, again, extracting DNA and trying to analyze it. So trying to create this map to help enforcement place pangolins back to where they came from, or identify which are like sort of leak points for pangolin trafficking.
Because if you can see that a bunch of pangolins seized have all come from a certain area, then you know that's an area of concern, right?
Exactly. So that's something we're working on with pangolin genomics that we're hoping will be of conservation value.
Right. Have you ever seen a pangolin?
Yes, I have. They get transplanted around quite a bit. Obviously lots of people in plantations see them. Then they don't know what to do with them, so they give them over to us, and then we try and release them into the forest. But I don't do stuff like that. I normally give it to like the Wildlife Authority, and I they just release it in some forest.
Right, interesting. So what are the biggest conservation challenges in Borneo, in Malaysia?
There's a competition for land, of course. A lot of Borneo is still underdeveloped. And economically minded people would look at all of these forests and say like, wow, that's signs of underdevelopment and the need for more investment, more resources to be extracted. But of course, we're not in that age anymore. We're not in the age of like looking at jungle as this primitive economy. We start bringing jungles towards a more modern economy and integrating jungles into the landscape of the modern economy. We just can't afford for what happened to the UK to also happen in Borneo, right? You know, what is the price for development? It can't be the eradication of all wild places. So Borneo's at a crosshairs, I think. You know, everyone in Borneo wants to be developed. They all want to be a thriving, robust, energetic economy. But you know, the whole world is telling them that they can't have that. They can't have that because they are forest. And they need to keep the forest. So I'm really interested in making sure that we integrate the forest and its resources into the modern economy. And what that means basically is, you know, we've figured out somewhat of a way to tax for carbon and account for the fact that forest can be useful as carbon sinks and therefore has economic value. But what about biodiversity? So I think we're still severely under accounting for what value a forest gives us.
100%.
So the exercise of integrating it economically is a important one. I think more people have to devote their attention to it, and I think once that happens, then has, you know, real market value, real world implications. You have the ears of everyone. When you think about a forest system.
I remember Amy Dickman saying to me when I met her in the WildCRU kitchen eating my couscous a couple weeks ago, and she was saying like that she had so many people say to her like, we got so much money to invest in conservation, we just don't know how to do it. So we need to find ways for people to invest.
And I think we have to move beyond beyond the model of like, I've got loads of money because I'm just some billionaire. And while that is great, I think what needs to happen is, you know, the sign that there is this person with just a surplus of money is a failure on an economic part as well, right? So there's that problem to deal with. But also, conservation shouldn't be the playground for rich people. Conservation needs to be part and parcel of the life of the everyday consumer. Because we can't just wait until we have surplus before we start thinking about conservation.
Definitely not, no.
Because then,
we don't have the resources.
No, and that's why I think like it needs to be reflected in the economy. The moment like every piece of bread you buy every piece of furniture you buy has been accounted for its carbon loss and biodiversity loss. Then you transfer the burden of forest loss onto everyone. Most importantly, the companies whose profits are dependent on that.
Yeah.
If you're an oil and gas company, you need to account for that. If you are a furniture company, you need to account for that. And then I think you shift the economy towards, obviously resource-based economies become less profitable.
Yeah.
Resources will become more expensive, but more reflective of what the actual price of the resource is. And I think that's probably where we need to head.
Yeah. So what's your thoughts on palm oil? Because I think when people talk about the Borneo rainforest,
They think palm oil
they think palm oil.
as the major. Here's my issue. I don't think the issue is palm oil, because I think the issue, replace palm oil with whatever X blank
Yeah.
crop or industry, it will be there.
Yeah.
There will always be this villain thing. But if you stop at the villain, the product, then you've missed the point,
Yeah.
right? If you just stop at we'll abandon palm oil and then the problems will be gone. That's a very naive thing to say.
Because something else, they'll grow coconut oil.
Yeah, whatever.
or
What you've done,
avocado oil.
what you've done really effective is you've taken away a really profitable crop,
Yeah, because
and they're going to substitute it for
a less profitable,
profitable
or less
crop.
efficient rather. I remember seeing
everyone
think-
knows that
yeah.
efficiency
palm oil.
buy for
Yeah.
how much more efficient palm oil is compared to everything else, and it's something
It's
like
like
10
4 times efficient, 10 times efficient.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Depending
compared to
where
the
you are.
next best oil bearing crop. So
Yeah.
if you banned it, like you're only
yeah,
gonna require more space to get
Yeah.
the same amount of oil,
exactly.
right?
And the idea that by switching off from palm oil, everyone's just gonna let all of that become forest. I mean, who in the right mind thinks that?
Yeah,
Like, why? In what world would
people
that
find
ever
some
be?
other thing to grow there.
Yeah. Like, no one's gonna just accept the fact that they don't have to earn a profit or earn an income.
yeah,
As people are gonna fight for their survival
yeah,
and do whatever they need to. So yeah, I'm not for palm oil. I don't love the crop. I don't think
Yeah.
we should make more of it. But I think banning it is probably the most ridiculous idea out there as a conservation strategy.
yeah,
As an economic one, it's not the worst idea.
yeah,
Because obviously, if you are in Europe, palm oil has got no benefit for your economy.
yeah,
So that leads to a lot of resentment among the palm oil people, because they think of, rightly or wrongly, that the incentives are economic. Because surely the conservation incentives don't make any sense. So maybe the incentives are economic, in which case
Interesting.
you're using conservation to convince people to avoid palm oil, but really what you are hoping to gain is some economic benefit.
Well, like more people buying like European
Rapeseed
yeah,
or
rapeseed
soil or whatever.
Yeah.
Soil.
It's interesting, I guess, yeah, because most people just see, orangutans home being chopped down.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, in the UK, like you said, we barely got any wild spaces left. So, if there was a field of rapeseed oil
Yeah.
or,
Yeah.
whatever, it doesn't seem as damaging.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So there's that whole argument of, well, it's not the problem of palm, but it's the problem of where is it being planted.
Yeah.
And fair enough, but I think that's a great argument and something we need to act on, which is why I think what I see as immediate horizon is give them a reason to keep jungle.
Yeah.
Give them an economic reason to do that.
Absolutely.
If we are saying that if you live on Borneo, you need to keep the forest and you can't use that for income, then we should come to a point of like, well, if
We
you
need a
live
solution.
if you live on Borneo, you should be earning an income for no reason at all. The rest of the world needs to pay for you to sustain your way of living, because we are prohibiting you from doing any economic activity.
Yeah.
If that's what we want. And I don't think that's a far-fetched idea, to be honest. The population in all of Borneo is like 3 million people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not huge.
For now, right?
For now, yeah.
Indonesia's got some big development plans on their side.
Yeah, on their side of things. Yeah.
Is their new capital going to be there, I think?
That was the plan, yeah, because Jakarta's sinking.
Yeah, Jakarta is sinking.
Yeah, so they're going to move it to Kalimantan.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think, something like a universal benefit for anyone who lives on Borneo, because of how limited your economic activities can be as a result of living by a forest. It's bloody difficult, man, to live by a forest, especially when you're telling them you have to keep it forest. You can't cut it down. You can't do any agriculture. Everything becomes difficult. Maneuvering city to city The roads are windy as hell,
Yep.
narrow as hell, dangerous as hell because they're
Yeah.
always collapsing.
Mm-hmm.
Transport becomes an issue, supply chains become an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Even simple things like where do you fill up gas? Like
Yeah.
there's only a few major towns and you have to be in those towns to fill up gas. All kinds of things. So I know it sounds like a ridiculous idea to put everyone on some universal benefit from the world that's funded by the world.
See, like, who's going to pay for that?
Yeah,
No
exactly.
other country would pay for that.
Yeah, but I think that to me sounds as ridiculous only as thinking about banning palm oil. That's
Okay.
the degree to which I think banning
Okay.
palm oil is a ridiculous idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So do you think, because, obviously I like orangutans and
Yeah.
rainforests, I was like, damn, like,
Yeah.
I'll avoid palm oil,
Yeah.
goodbye digestive biscuits, etc.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, sustainable palm oil, that sounds nice. But
Yeah.
what's your thoughts on you
Yeah.
have the branding of sustainable palm oil,
Yeah.
but I'm like, they say, oh, it can't be on the forested land, but how long does it have to be deforested for it to count as
you're right.
okay,
You're right.
right?
Yeah, the sustainable palm oil is not just about conservation or environmentalism. It's also about social benefit,
Yeah.
which is a really important component in palm oil. Because obviously, my argument only makes sense if communities are uplifted through this crop.
Yeah.
If, for example, all of the palm is owned by people in the capital of Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, or Indonesia, and it's held by a small group of companies that are huge, then that my argument shatters immediately. Because my whole premise is people in Borneo deserve an income, they deserve similar quality of life to anyone else in the world and shouldn't suffer just because they were born near a jungle. If that is my argument, then palm oil needs to be, if palm oil is there, it needs to be deliver its promise of uplifting people out of poverty in Borneo. The fact is, a lot of palm oil companies are not run well. There's all kinds of labor abuses. There's all kinds of human rights violations. And sustainable palm oil is a way of dealing with those issues as well, which I think are equally important to the environmental ones. Land ownership and land titles is a tricky one because you've rightly identified the issue. They may not cut a forest for palm oil, but when was it cut?
Yeah.
It must have been cut at some point. So if the government goes and says, okay, fine, we'll deforest this for timber, and once we're done with the timber, then you can plant your palm, and we'll sell you back the land.
Yeah.
Right. So in that sense, there's a loophole here. You can just wait for the land to be cut by the government,
Yeah.
or for a timber concession, which is don't have the same rules, and then the palm can buy from them.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are issues like that. So how sustainable is sustainable palm oil? It's much better than not having sustainable palm oil, I'd say.
Okay.
But if you're expecting it to be biodiversity neutral, that's never gonna happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as you have palm oil, biodiversity suffers.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Nice. I remember, I think it's out now, Yad Vendamali was saying, I think it was on Borneo, he was doing a study looking at the biodiversity between old growth forests and like logged forests.
Yeah, and it's great in logged forest.
Yeah, and there was higher biodiversity in areas,
logged
particularly in things like deer and then I presume clouded leopards.
Yeah.
Because there's more sunlight hitting the lower understories, so there's more plants that the deers can actually reach. So there's more deer, more herbivores.
Yeah.
Thus, there's more things for leopards to eat.
Yeah.
And like he was saying, I'm preparing for people to throw tomatoes at me because then you're gonna have all these people taking it out of context, saying like logged forests are great for biodiversity. We should log more forests. But what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean it fits perfectly with what we've been finding with cloud leopards as well.
Yeah.
Though I haven't scrutinized his paper.
I mean, either I haven't looked at it yet.
Yeah.
We saw it when it was in like review.
Yeah. So even with our data sets, we can't confidently say that there's always problems with narrowing down taxa as representatives of biodiversity. And when you narrow your taxa down to key predators that are dependent on key prey, like cloud leopards and pigs and deer, they have a pretty close relationship. But what pigs and deer like is not at all representative of biodiversity. It's a bunch of herbivores who really like shrubs and seeds on the ground, which come about quite easily when you get young trees that are trying to grow quickly, which happens in log forest. So it's perfect conditions. Deers love these young shoots, so obviously having these young plants come up are beautiful for deer because they're in the understory. So just because you're seeing a pattern in these specific taxa is dangerous to extrapolate towards all of biodiversity. I'm not saying this is what Yadvinder did, of course.
Yeah.
But at least when I read our cloud leopard paper, it's like, there's definitely a high number of cloud leopards in logged forests. I can't say that biodiversity is high, of course, because
No, you can just say clouded leopards are higher.
yeah, exactly, and that could be for a whole number of reasons.
Yeah.
Could be cloud leopard just like walking log forest more. Could be I am better able to detect them at log forest.
Yeah.
Where I put the cameras, boom, they tend to go there.
That's true.
Whereas in the primary forest or old growth forest, I have no idea where to put the cameras. Less clear features. Cloud leopards not choosing the same places I'm choosing. All kinds of things.
Yeah.
So I would scrutinize the data set a bit more, but it's not. I would say that finding is not surprising to anyone in the field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Even I would see a lot more. I mean, even tourists know this. Like you walk through a log forest, you'll see a lot more.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. Even orangutans, man.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you're more likely to see them in log forest than.
You're more likely to see them, but
Yeah.
do you think there are more in
Yeah, this is a question.
Yeah.
Like how
Yeah.
how can you answer that question? It's impossible. You can only count what you can see.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is deep.
Yeah.
Wild.
Anyway, on that nice, bright, cheery note, shall we make some concluding remarks?
Yeah, sure, man.
About
Oh, yeah,
everything
God,
we've
yeah, we
spoken
gotta jump in the minibus scene.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do one shorter question and then wrap it up.
Sure.
So what advice would you give to your younger self?
Just stay the course. Not be too worried about the future. I think I was always like really anxious about what was the next step and whether I was appropriately planning for it. I think it was just more of, instead of thinking about what's happening next, just think about how can I be the best at what I do now.
Yeah.
Wherever that is in my station in life.
Yeah.
I mean, that's advice I should give myself now as well, really.
No, same. Literally, I was like reflecting on the year a bit like last week. And I was like, if I could change something from last year, what would it be?
Yeah.
And it was like, just worry less,
Yeah.
just continue working on being more assertive when I need to be,
Yeah.
but just don't worry is the main one. Right?
Yeah, exactly. I think like, you can plan so much for the future.
Yeah.
I could have never, as short as 5 years ago, couldn't have planned sitting here on this table with you.
Yeah.
In this building. No chance. But 5 years is pretty short time horizon and much has changed. So it almost makes planning, at least these detailed kind of things, a bit futile.
Yeah.
I think having broad goals are cool. Having broad objectives are cool. But yeah, I would have rather spent a lot more time just honing my craft for what I knew was important to me then.
Nice.
Like, when I was a biotechnologist, like just being really good at biotechnology.
Yeah.
Or when I was living in the field, just learning everything about the field, IDing birds and learning the calls of frogs and all kinds of those things, right?
I see.
Yeah, and now I guess learning the stats and bioinformatics and those things.
Nice. Okay, final question then.
Yeah.
If you had a billboard,
Yeah,
you could put any message on it,
yeah,
and the whole world's going to see it.
yeah.
What are you putting on that billboard?
This is a tough one. I can't. Yeah, I can't think of anything that's not going to be like this big cliche.
Live, laugh, love.
Yeah. Don't fuck up.
Don't fuck up. Cool. Nice.
Let's go.
Thank you very much, man. Been a pleasure.
Cheers.
Thank you very much. Oh, and where can people find you? If they
Oh
want
yeah,
questions?
I'm on Twitter as Chrishen Gomez. I'm on Instagram as Chrishen Gomez, and I'm on Facebook as Chrishen Gomez.
Okay, so if you want to slide into his DMs?
Yeah,
there you
go for it.
There we have it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed this riveting episode of the Jamie Berlin podcast. If you've listened to the end, as always, thank you very much. I love you very much. You're an absolute legend. Chrishen is the first of hopefully many WildCRU guests on the podcast, and I'm delighted to have infiltrated WildCRU and become friends with so many amazing people. Chrishen is a great guy, and it was a pleasure to have him on the podcast. And as always, we had a fantastic time. I hope this episode has inspired you with some fresh perspectives on conservation, genetics, palm oil, and what life can be like studying clouded leopards. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it far and wide, and give both Chrishen and I a follow on our social media. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.